I love kind of what we've outlined to chat about today and allow it to go wherever it goes.
Well, I appreciate being here today. I remember, I got to read your book about a year ago when my friend introduced me about you, who you were, and I read your book and I was like, I like this person. I don't even know who she is. I want to get to meet her.
I
And
know.
and it was like your energy was so palpable through the book. I
Mm.
was like, I don't know who this person is. And my friend kept talking about you. His Michael. He kept saying what an amazing human being you were. And I was like, I got to get to meet Kristen. I have to meet her. The bird woman, I call you.
Yeah, Birdie.
That's for sure. Looking forward to it.
So I want to dive in and talk about a little bit to shift gears because I know we may have a little time crunch out at a certain time. How you found the world of chiropractic care, how you
Well,
got
that's a fun
started, your
story.
journey into it. Yeah.
August 25th, 1994, I got hit by a car on a bicycle. I broke my hip, broke my shoulder, split open my face. You see that nice scar there?
Mm.
And I found myself laying in bed for 6 weeks, like peeing in a bedpan, that kind of
Mm.
fun stuff. Hooked on Percocets and really was not
Mm.
doing well. And my mom's friend was starting to date a chiropractor. And she said, Hey, you need to go see my friend Bill. And I was like, chiropractor? Like, I had no idea about chiropractic or understanding of it at all. So I went to this guy on a Saturday morning. He took an x ray this way, he took an x ray this way, and then he took one from the top of my head. And I'm like, what is this all about? Right. And then he walks in the room, starts drawing lines all over the place. He says, turn on your right side, walks up to me, boom, hits my neck and walks out of the room. I'm like, what was that? I had no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I end up going home, turning on a college football game. Next thing I know, I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. This was like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Now it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sleeping on a couch in my mom's house. And I said to her, Hey, why'd you let me sleep in my clothes? She goes, That's the first time you've slept
Mm.
in 6 weeks without Percocet. That was
Mm.
a wake up call. Went back, got adjusted again on Monday. Guy puts me on my side, slams my neck, boom, walks out of the room. I'm like, what the hell was that? Didn't
Wow.
explain anything to me. I have no idea. I said, next time I come in on Wednesday, and I'm following what the lawyer wants me to do because I had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in and he goes to adjust me. I said, No, you need to tell me what you're doing. He goes, I don't got time. I got patients to go. I said, Listen, I need to know what you're doing to me. Every time I go home, I fall asleep for like 12 to 16 hours. He says to
Mm.
me, Good, that means your body's healing. That was the first time I even
Mm.
heard the word healing and understood it, besides pills and potions and lotions. I grew up with a grandfather who was a pharmacist, and that's a whole nother
Mm.
story.
Oh, wow.
And with that world, I I was raised in the medicine world. My sister
Mm-hmm.
was antibiotics to death. The poor girl had ear infections as a kid. Had she gone to a chiropractor, she probably never had those ear infections. Long story short, that's how I got to chiropractic, became a chiropractor. And then in the end of my chiropractic schooling, I learned about this technique called network spinal analysis
Mm.
under a guy named Dr. Donald Epstein. And it was more of an emotional release technique. And I was starting to learn about guys like Bruce Lipton, and I was starting to see people like Dr. Joe Dispenza was showing up at campus. I actually saw these guys before they were famous,
Wow. I know
but they
your
were
story
talking.
reminds me of Dr. Joe's a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is kind of similar, and then in 2000, let's see, I guess it was 2006, 2007. My daughter gets run over by a car.
Wow.
It's her pelvis. Thank you, God, she didn't die. She
Mm-hmm.
should have been. In all intents and purposes, a miracle took place. She had a small fracture in her pelvis, and she had a Lexus SUV on her body, her over, not once but twice. I don't want to get into too much of the details, but within 5 years of her having this, she started getting like OCD type symptoms. And we started looking at different ways to help her, and one of them was through neurofeedback.
Mm.
It happened to be, and also I was looking to find some sort of modality for my practice, but here it was. God put this in my hands and started doing neurofeedback. Then I started really getting into the idea of trauma in the body. Vanderkart wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And then there was
Right.
another book, Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert. And
Mm.
all these different people were coming out and starting to talk about trauma and how it impacts our body, it impacts our brain. As a chiropractor, I knew that when I would adjust people, like I can get them out of pain, but the emotional pain would still be there.
Mm.
And I can get them out of pain and I can help them, walk better. All this is great stuff, but on a level to a certain level I can go. When we were in chiropractic school, they promised you the world. They said chiropractic can heal anything, which, a nervous system free of interference is going to be a lot better. than one that's interfered. But miracles, I saw miracles, but nothing like I was promised. But when I started doing neurofeedback, when I started doing network spinal analysis, I started to see miracles. And then, you start to look at other functions, people walking in, and I noticed every patient of mine is walking in with a thyroid problem.
Mm.
All these women are on Synthroid. And I'm like, this is weird. And so, when I started going to neurofeedback seminars, they're talking about, well, you might want to take this to another level. You might want to learn some functional medicine. So we started looking into functional medicine. And I can go into so many different topics right now.
Yeah, no, I love that it's like a holistic approach to healing,
Right. Well,
like mind,
I,
body, spirit,
first of
energetic.
all, I have a big rule. If I can get someone off drugs, that's a win. That's like, some people feel good when they win the Super Bowl. Some people feel good when they win an Oscar or a Tony. I'm not going to win any awards for what I do, but I win awards by changing people's lives. And I don't change people's lives. Let me just be straight with this. I get to move bones and I get to watch people utilize the technology we use, but their body heals themselves. And there's a power within us. We have to first acknowledge there's a healing power within all of us. We call this inborn intelligence innate. I'll call it God, whatever you want to call it. That intelligence is what tells every cell in your body what to do, from your brain down to every cell in your body, right? You have an afferent and efferent nerve that goes from and to the body, from the brain to the cells. So when trauma gets caught in our body and it gets stuck in our body, it causes all kinds of other issues. Like the brain starts to think it's under attack, or a fight or flight response. You start to see the amygdala will get caught up in, that's the reptilian brain. And what happens with the reptilian brain is that we see that a person will get feeling like they're always in a fight or flight response. So, and I see this all the time in my practice. You'll see people come in here, they think it's anxiety. It is anxiety symptoms, but really what's happening is their brain is in a fight or flight response and they can't get out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what things can you do? Well, there's so many different approaches. Breathing is one. Yoga is such a strong place to start. Why? Because once we start to breathe and we activate the phrenic nerve, what ends up happening is, and the vagus nerve, we start to calm the body down. And that's a temporary thing until then trauma kicks back in. Now, trauma, there are three types of trauma. We have chemical trauma, we have emotional trauma, we have physical trauma. Physical trauma will be like stored in the repair of the body. So we see that. That's easy to fix, physical trauma. As long as it's not gone too far gone, the body heals itself that way. Chemical trauma, we change the body's chemistry through nutrition, through supplementation, through detox. That's one way to get rid of chemical trauma. But emotional trauma is one that doesn't go away so quick and so easily. And there's a reason. Emotional trauma sticks around because of the story we keep telling ourselves. So I like psychotherapy. I think it's important, but I don't think psychotherapy is the only thing you can do to get rid of trauma. I think psychotherapy
I
is
agree.
really good to get rid of the story, to change the story, or to accept the story. That trauma's still in the body. You get used to that trauma.
For sure. Like I remember okay, had done so much like reframing or rewriting of the narratives that I had told myself, but then there was still the element until I learned like the different emotional release techniques or like different things to move it out of my body. I didn't know. I was like, why am I still like having some of these, symptoms or something? And so it's really interesting too. I didn't even look at trauma as like those three separate entities or categories. So I like how you broke that down.
One of the therapies that I've seen great results in is it's a somatic respiratory integration type of technology. It's called core energetics. And so when an emotion comes up, you go beat the pants off of something and you get it out of your body. You work it out to the point until you cry it out, scream it out, yell it out, and get it out.
Yeah. I mean, I just the other day, yesterday, I did a breathwork session because I'm doing this like 30-day challenge thing. And I did a breathwork and all of a sudden I just like started crying. And I feel like it was connected to recent grief, but I don't have to know the story. It was just the release of some kind of pent
Well,
up.
what if I tell you that grief doesn't matter where it comes from? It might not even be yours in the
I don't have
first
to
place.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
It might be your mom's. It might be your grandmother's. It could be your grandfather's. See, here's the thing. I don't know if you know the famous study that was done in epigenetics back around 2010. They took rats and they love the smell of cherry blossoms. And what they did was they started to give these rats, every time they come near cherry blossoms, an electric shock. Right. Eventually, the rats don't want to go near the electricity or the shock or the smell. So it creates a trauma. And they can measure the stress response in the rat every time it smells the cherry blossoms.
Wow.
Now they breed these rats after they don't go near cherry blossoms anymore. 2, 3 generations, 5 generations down. And what they do then is they see that the rats, their grandchildren, great grandchildren also detect trauma
Wow.
when they smell the cherry blossoms. So immediately causing anxiety. So there was an old saying in the Bible that said, hey, the sins of your fathers will be passed for generations. This is very common. I work in New York, and I've worked with a lot of uh, Hasidic Jews and people who are Holocaust survivors of 2, 3 generations.
Mm.
And these people have trauma and real trauma in their bodies, not because I think so, because their brain maps say so, right? And so when we start to look at all these things that happen to people, it's an accumulation, like an onion, right? You have physical trauma, you've had car accidents, you've fallen, you've broken bones, you've done things physically trauma. Emotional trauma goes into anything. Even misconceptions of things you think were real might not even be real. And they say that the most traumatic thing, something at the age of 4 or 5 years of age, that's when we start to see trauma hit us, when we wake up out of the dream state of being a child. And we wake up to the world's not a safe place and that we're not as good as we thought we were. Something in that little voice starts to kick in our head, that reptilian voice that keeps kicking in to say, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good looking enough, all these things that kick in. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to heal this.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting. Yeah, I read something. I mean, I don't know if it was in The Body Keeps the Score or some other one about how, yeah, I'm an egg in my mom while she's in the stomach of my grandmother.
Right.
So I'm like, and then how many does that go back?
But even still, the DNA gets programmed, right? So programming our DNA is being programmed from the person who gave us birth. You're getting your mom's DNA and your dad's DNA. Now, unfortunately, their DNA, and you can change DNA. So let's be understanding of something also. You're not a fixed condition, right? If that was the case, if you had DNA that said you would have a heart disease and you took care of yourself and you exercised and you ate right, the probability of heart disease is not going to happen. You might be prone to it, but you most likely can prevent it. A lot of the things that we get sick from are preventable. We're not impacted by our genes, from what I understand. And there's all kinds of studies out there. Like there's a guy named Dr. Joe McCord, who in the world of free radical biology, he was a genius. He created some products that actually slow down the aging process, right? That actually stop aging in our body. Aging is just free radicals wrapping around our DNA and destroying our DNA. So we can utilize certain nutrients and herbs to heal the brain and heal the body as well. And a lot of people think supplements are the answer. There's a lot of bad research out there about supplements.
And then also, if you don't test for what you're deficient in, like how are you just guessing or random? Oh, I read that this is good. Let me take some of this.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize toxicity of too much vitamins also in the body. Like we can put too much something in our body and cause problems. There's something that we don't. And on top of that, half these vitamin companies, they're fraudulent, right? They're not monitored. So the FDA does not watch and see what they put in this stuff. So they could put sawdust in there and tell you it's 500 milligrams of vitamin C. You take it thinking you're getting 500 milligrams of vitamin C. You're not getting 500 milligrams of vitamin C. Consumer Reports did a whole thing around vitamins and showed that most vitamin companies do not put in what they say they do. And I'm going to say this, vitamins are adding to our bodies what we don't have in our food. The truth is, the majority of the food we eat, if you're eating healthy, you'll get the majority of stuff. You're not going to get vitamin D. You need to supplement with that. Sunlight's your best thing, but unfortunately, there are minerals that we're depleted in, electrolytes, the more you exercise. So simple things like table salt, not table salt, I'm sorry, like ocean salt, sea salt.
Yeah.
Can be really good for you.
I started putting Celtic salt in my coffee.
In your coffee, that's
it's so good because it just gives it. Well, I use like a little stevia chocolate drop, a little Celtic sea salt, and then kind of make this like.
Well, that's good because coffee depletes that stuff right out of your body, so it's a perfect mix. As it goes in, it goes out. That's a great idea.
I don't know, I just love it, and it satisfies my, like, savory sweet thing. So I wanna ask you a couple of clarifying questions too, like, give me, like, the dummies version book of, like, what neurofeedback is, and is that what brain mapping is?
Well, brain mapping is first telling us what parts of the brain are not effective, what's
Okay.
not working,
Okay.
right? So we're looking at areas of the brain. So we're looking at three major things. We're
Okay.
looking first at the magnitude of the brain. How much energy is the brain using? How
Mm,
peaks are the waves of your
mm.
brain? So big waves tend to be someone with attention deficit. So
Oh,
anxiety is going to be someone very fast brain waves, right?
mm,
Then we're going to look at the left to right side of the brain. We're going to see the symmetry. And when we see a dominant symmetry, we can tell if a person's depressed or if they have
mm,
anxiety. And
mm,
then we're going to look at their dominant brainwave pattern. If they get stuck in a delta brainwave pattern, most
mhm,
likely they've had a head trauma or some sort
mm,
of concussion,
mhm.
traumatic brain injury. They might also have some metabolic issues as well, not metabolic, but more like metals, heavy metals, and
Yeah.
exotoxicity in the body. So that will cause brain waves to be very slow. Now, the next set of brain waves that we get are theta brain waves. The theta brain waves are what people know of for meditative states.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to get into like an alpha theta state, and that's great. But if you're stuck in a theta brain wave and you can't regulate out of it, you're going to be an attention deficit kind of person, an ADD, ADHD
Mm,
person.
mm.
If you have high alpha brain waves, most likely you have a metabolic issue. You're going to have mitochondrial issues in the
Wow.
cell. You're going to have more prone to depression, more leaky gut issues. You're going to see things that are, you're going to feel depressed. And depression is a multi layered thing. You know, besides the emotions, you also will have trauma to the gut, you know, like lack of the collagen is something that's really powerful for healing the gut, but you also have, you know, no prebiotics or probiotics, so the flora of your digestion starts to go, and that goes right back to that book I told you, Molecules of Emotion with Candace Pert.
I wrote it down so I can read it.
Great book. I met her. She was an amazing woman. And then there's beta brainwaves. Beta brainwaves are like a fight or flight response.
Mm,
Anxiety. You're not going to
mhm.
sleep when you have high
I'm
beta
familiar.
brainwaves.
I'm familiar with those waves.
Well, you know, with women with hormones, it's also a factor as well. Women, by their hormones, are affected. And I do believe, in all honesty, that our wonderful country, I'm hoping Robert Kennedy does something good here because uh, I think that they're truly messing with us and our hormones and whatnot.
Mm,
We don't know what they're spraying up in the sky. They don't know what we're putting in our drinking water. God forbid you got the vaccine during the COVID pandemic. Only knows what they were putting in that. I mean,
mhm.
it's continuous. And unfortunately, we live in a society that if you speak out, you're a
You're
heretic.
blacklisted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
a
I was
heretic.
so afraid to come out that I didn't get the vaccine during it because I was like, "Oh, wow, if I share this information, I'm gonna be suddenly, like, cast out of society." And I think as communal tribal beings, like, we have that innate,
Well, the
our
programming is
innate.
pretty strong. I
Yeah,
acknowledge you for not doing it because that took a
yeah.
lot because the majority of people were scared out of their minds. You know, you turn on the news and you get told
Mhm,
that 30,000 people died today of COVID or whatever the numbers were. How
mhm,
many more people every day? And they just keep banging those war drums. And now they're going to have someone come on TV and go, "You're not coming out of your home until you get this vaccine." Scares people. So people want their freedom, thinking if they get this vaccine, they're going to be able to go out there in the world and live
mhm.
their lives. What we forget, though, is when you inject something into the bloodstream, right? That's the fastest way to damage the body. Like, think
Mm,
about it. You know, if you were to smoke crack, right, it goes directly into your bloodstream.
mm,
If you inject heroin, it goes directly into the bloodstream. If you snort cocaine or whatnot, and the reason I'm using drugs is because this is what people understand. You snort cocaine, it gets diluted in your mucous membrane and then gets into the stream. If you take something that you eat and it affects your body, it slowly affects the body, right?
mhm,
So we can learn things about drugs. I'm not saying I advocate for using heavy drugs, but anything goes directly into the bloodstream is going to work very fast. It's going to pass the innate intelligence body's defense mechanisms
hmm.
right away. That's a dangerous thing. If you were to catch, let's say, COVID, right, your immune system is supposed to look at it, takes in these T cells, mimics those things, and next time it shows up in the body, it deletes them. It like fights it off immediately. But when you put in something directly into the body can't recognize that immediately, and it's under attack. The body goes into this complete attack mode to protect itself. That's just the innate intelligence of the body. Something foreign doesn't belong. The body doesn't go, well, welcome to the house. It's got to check it out, right? That's why we
Yeah.
have T cells, why our intelligence in our body is so smart. During the pandemic, and I can't believe we went down this road, but we will, all logic went out the road, out the window. Viruses went from being something that was brought to you through spit or urine or poop or, bodily fluids, blood, and they, like AIDS during the 80s, you couldn't get AIDS from kissing somebody, but you could from intercourse and blood, right? And of course, if you sprayed AIDS on the sidewalk, no one was going to get it. If it was on the countertop, no one was going to get it. Now, all of a sudden, people are pouring bleach on their food because they believe that a virus can last 15 hours out of a host. No, it can't. Never could, never will. So that was garbage, right?
Yeah.
There was so much misinformation being said during the pandemic to scare people.
Yeah, I kind of definitely felt that it was, I don't know, I just leaned into my woman's intuition. I was like, there's just something that feels off here. I don't know if I trust this. I'm
Well,
going to turn off the news. Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to turn off the news. And then I kind of subscribe to the fact that, my body, my choice across the board. So I'm like, whether it's,
Amen.
I'm like, what I put into my body is like my say so. And so I also love my freedom. So
Yeah.
I'm, I
Well,
mean,
we did a lot of hiking, and it was fun
yeah,
during the pandemic to
yeah.
watch people as we were. When I first started going out hiking, no one was out there. It was great. I'd go hiking for hours, not see a soul. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, people started coming out onto the mountain, and I'm seeing them hiking with a mask on, and I'm like, going, are you worried that if you breathe out into the big open valley that you look down into, you might catch this pandemic?
The cleaner air now with less air travel and all the other
Yeah.
things.
The whole
But I do want to touch on that. I think that we tend to like see it as so polarized, but at the core of it though, it's people choosing the best decision that they thought was going to keep them healthy. And so whether, I chose not to, you chose not to, but some people, got the vaccine because they thought it was going to keep them healthy, that kind of thing. So it's like kind of like that same,
I think what really happened, Kristen, if you really want to get straight with it, is that people were forced to do something they didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I do believe, in all honesty, and that's traumatic also. I'm going to share with you that I see more kids now coming into my office because of the pandemic from being stuck on computers all day, playing on tablets, not going outside. During that time, I'm seeing more and more kids walking in my office, 8-year-old kids with anxiety.
Wow.
Now, in my humble opinion, an 8-year-old kid should not have anxiety. And when you talk to 8-year-old kids and they're talking politics, that's another thing. I don't understand what parents are doing now to children. Why? And that's trauma that's going to be programmed again back into the DNA. These kids are, like if you look at post-World War II people who lived in Europe. I have friends that are Italian, that their families grew up in Italy during the war, that they were eating dandelions. That trauma was in them. All right. And it was in their children and their grandchildren. Holocaust survivors. Trauma continues. This is not something that goes away. And if we're creating an environment that's unsafe, right? These kids don't feel safe. Their autonomic nervous system is going to feel like it's a fight or flight response. So going back to neurofeedback, what we do then is after we get a map, we find the areas of the brain that are most dysregulated. Usually frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal, occipital, motor strip, right? We're looking at different areas of the brain. And then what we do is we operantly condition or train the brain through watching the screen. And as I'm watching the screen, I'll have wires. Let's say it's my temporal lobe. I have a high emotional component on my right side of my brain, or my language is off on my left side of my brain, right? I'm going to have 2 wires here, and it's just going to read information into the computer. And as I'm watching the screen, if I'm in the desired area that's going to get my neurons to fire and wire, then what I'm going to do is the screen's going to play bright. But it's going to want to challenge me, and it's going to make it harder and harder and harder for me. So I get into this window. Now, it's hard to describe the window here, but it wants to keep me in a zone. And if I keep myself in the zone, my neurons in my brain are going to keep firing and wiring. I'm being rewarded every time I'm in the zone, and the zone gets smaller and smaller. Kind of like when Pavlov did that whole thing with dogs, he would feed them meat powder, he'd ring a bell, and then they would salivate. Then eventually stop feeding them meat powder, just rang a bell. He got to condition the brain to think that there was meat there. and they would salivate, right? Anticipating. Well, we don't make people salivate. What we do is get people's neurons to fire, and then they start to wire together. And as they wire together, they create new neural pathways, thickening the cortex of the brain and causing the brain to create new patterns to stop the trauma.
Mm,
And,
beautiful.
it's pretty amazing to see what it does. Because I have people come in with an aura ring. I saw you had one on before, right?
Hmm.
You have an aura ring. So
Yeah.
when we do neurofeedback on someone and they're doing it and they're wearing their aura
Take it
ring,
off.
no, 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 no,
I'll leave it
no.
on.
It's great.
Leave it on. Oh, cool. Okay.
The aura ring will tell them they took a nap. It was a good 30-minute nap you just took,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yep. Yep. And they're like, wow, look at this, doc. Like, I have cases of PTSD in my office. I have right now, I'll give you some of the off cases that have been in my office. I had a kid that was getting in fist fights every day at school. And he's a big kid. I think he's 11 or 12, getting in fights every day. Mom's calling me up, really nervous. It ain't going away. Kid starts to get better. All of a sudden, he's not fighting. Now his grades are going up. His brain has calmed down. His brain has been thinking it's in a fight or flight response, right? So he comes
Mhm.
from a home that's broken, mom and dad divorced. Not that that's bad. I'm just saying that's how he perceives the world, right? That's
Mhm.
not safe. Now all of a sudden his brain is starting to feel safe.
Mhm.
Another case, a little boy who came in my office who got two beautiful parents, right? Really nice relationship. But this kid, nervous, wouldn't get on a bus, afraid to go to school, right? Started doing neurofeedback on him. He's winning spelling bees. The kid was doing horrible in school. This is the type of stuff that happens. Once you get the brain to start firing and wiring, you can actually change the direction of a person's life. And people say to me, you charge a lot of money for this. And I'm like, well, to change someone's teeth, braces wise, it's like $7,000, right? I change a person's brain for about $3,500.
Mhm.
Now, it costs a lot more money to have a bad brain than it does to have messed up
Yeah.
teeth, even
And
though
well,
we
and
like
like,
teeth.
and what the quality of life is going to be like. How do you put a value on that if you're going to be able to go and function and thrive in the world?
Yep.
So it's like
Now, I will tell you,
exponentially.
we haven't touched the taboo part of my business.
Oh, well, I want to also, I want to, yeah, just say, it's also just because I think I had like mentioned to you or asked you, I was like, hey, Dr. Ron, all the things I did to my frontal lobe before it was fully developed, like,
Yeah, you might
yeah,
have. You might have done some damage, but
yeah.
remember, the brain is always constantly rewiring itself,
Hmm.
right? And it really comes down to, can you get rid of the stories? And
Hmm.
one of the things that I find that works amazing for really accepting the stories is psychedelics.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about synthetics. I'm talking about like mushrooms and ayahuasca.
I love
I've done
mushrooms.
both, and I can share with you my first experience on a psilocybin ceremony. I
Please.
went to the ceremony, and I said to the guy, we come with an intention, and the intention was, what is my life purpose? I'm a midlife person. I'm in my early 50s, and I want to figure out what's my purpose in life, and why am I not living the life I want to live? Those were the two questions,
Mm.
right? So the first day it was obvious. I'm a servant. I was helping everybody through the ceremony, breathing when they were stuck, helping them find their way. I felt at home in the ceremony. I didn't see any darkness yet, right? But I wasn't looking for it. The next night, my friend Sal says to me, "Hey, Ron," he says, the guy who does our ceremonies, he says, "You're a good giver, but can you receive?" And I was like,
Mm.
and the traumas in my life, I grew up in a physically abusive home. I got a lot of physical abuse. So there I was getting some body work the second night, feeling pretty good in my little mushroom world. And he starts to open up the energy centers in my body. And all of a sudden I can feel like the energy start to surge through my body, going up each chakra. I can feel it. And then all of a sudden it hit here. My head tilts back and I let out the most primal scream I've ever let out in my life. Not just a primal scream, but a scream for about 30 plus minutes. And as I'm screaming, all of a sudden people are coming to me to help me, want to be me, protect me. And I'm in this world inside my head where I'm watching a video of all the physical trauma I've been through being grown up as a kid. Like it's literally like a television screen of all the trauma. And then in the end, I hear something in my head say, I did this for you, not to you.
Mm.
I did this for you, not to you. Not once, not twice, but
Mm.
three times. Then I heard it wasn't a punishment, it was a gift. For you to
Mm.
be a healer, you would have to feel and understand what other people went through. Otherwise, you couldn't be a healer. And it was like, whoa. And when I opened my eyes, two of my closest friends were sitting right there. One of them was Michael, and the other one was a woman named Sarah. And at that time, they were both there for me, and they were sitting there, and tears were rolling down my face. And I felt like I lost 15, 20 pounds. Mm. All right. And I felt lighter. And next morning, I woke up and I went up to Sal and I said, I don't know what you did, but I want to learn what you do. And I want to bring people to you because healing is very important. And people can't heal in the headspace we're in. If you realize that your amygdala is constantly judging everything you do and constantly forcing you to, this is bad, I'm good, all the story that keeps playing over and over in our head. In the world of landmark education, they call this thing the already always way of being. We get stuck in a pattern. When we're stuck in this pattern, you have to break it. Psychedelics can help break it. And I will say mirror work while on psychedelics is really amazing because you get to really see who you are. And you can fall in love with yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but a way to accept who you are. And acceptance is really how we heal. I think I could go into a whole psychedelic trip I went on ayahuasca, where I got really some amazing downloads on suffering and why we suffer. And maybe we'll do that the next time we speak because it's not
Up to you.
okay, we can hit it. I'll go over it quick, right? The first
Yeah.
thing ayahuasca said to me, I'm sitting there, it's a beautiful sunny day. I don't know anybody in this circle. We're outdoors in the woods, and there's a bunch of guys, and they're just chugging ayahuasca. And I'm watching the guy who's giving it to them. I'm like, why more than one cup? Is it weak? Is there something wrong with it, right? And the macho me goes, yeah, I need more just because those guys got more. But there's like 4 or 5 guys like, yeah. They're smoking and getting high before, and then they take the ayahuasca. And then I hear people in the circle. And I said to myself, it's a beautiful day today, and I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. This is for my highest good. That's what I asked for. Whatever this is, be it my highest good. And all of a sudden I hear people crying and people vomiting. And all the tough guys that were making a lot of noise are now heaving and are miserable. And I'm just like, wow. And I could hear all of a sudden my body say to me, you enjoying the colors? And I said, yes. He goes, would you like to learn a little bit about suffering? And I said, yeah. Well, you're going to learn about suffering because you're connected to every one of these people here today. Energetically, you're connected to everyone in this circle. So you're going to feel it. You're going to feel other people's suffering. And I think on some level we do. The first thing I learned in the suffering process to heal suffering is one, you're not in charge. Just accept it. You're just a little piece of the puzzle that helps either evolve people or you evolve, right? Like the whole purpose of living is to evolve. And whatever's in charge, and I'm going to call it what it is, God, whatever's in charge is causing you every day to find your way to him. Right now it's going to sound a bit Christian, but that's what it got me to. I was raised Jewish and I live more in the world of every day I'm trying to find God. Every day I'm trying to be more with God and accept God and love God. But the first thing is really that you're in a karmic circle or a soup, and you're here to help other people and they're here to help you. So there is no good and there's no bad. That was the wild one. There's no good, there's no bad. What do you mean there's no good and there's no bad? Just what's so. So if someone dies from a traumatic situation, yes, the attachment is painful, but that person might have died to help someone else evolve or have them find themselves because they're so tortured. A guy goes to jail, he's going to learn something. Now, unfortunately, the system's not meant, and it's much more complex than this, and I can go for hours in this. Second thing was about forgiveness. I'm going over this fast. Forgiveness. Forgive everybody, and have them forgive you. Ask for forgiveness. And then forgive yourself, because that's the most important part. We don't forgive ourselves. We beat ourselves up, right? So forgiveness was the second thing. And then the medicine said to me, you got to learn to love. I love you. You have to learn to love people the way I love you. And I saw these eyes in the sky, and I was like, whoa. And I'm looking, and the eyes are saying, I love you. You need to learn to love unconditionally. And then it was like, okay, so if I love unconditionally, and that was a tough one, right? Because I know I don't love unconditionally. If I can love unconditionally, what if people don't love me unconditionally? That was the question I asked. And all of a sudden I heard acceptance. You have to accept people where they're at. You're here to evolve and they're here to evolve. And we're not all on the same planes. Though we might be physically here, in our minds, evolution is a spiritual thing. And we want to evolve as beings, right? So trauma is going to stop that evolving. But again, trauma, is to help you evolve, not hurt you. All right. This is, again, the process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Totally resonates with me.
All right. So then after that, I'm like getting butterflies flying around me. And I'm like looking at this butterfly and just staring. And I'm watching this poor woman on the right of me vomiting and a guy on the left of me vomiting and this butterfly circling me. And I go to want to help the person and I hear, don't. Would you help the butterfly out of the cocoon? And I'm like,
Mm,
don't help anybody unless they ask for help
mm,
because you're not allowing them to have the process they need
mhm,
to heal themselves. You're not here to fix anybody. You're here to work on
mhm,
yourself. You can't change anybody. And then
mhm.
the next thing that came through my head was this. I had been listening to a Robert Kennedy interview earlier, so I think this might have been coming. It was around the same time he came out on Rogan. He was talking about this guy, Cephasus, I think his name is. He pushes a rock up a hill and the hill
Hmm.
rolls down. He pushes it back up. And I heard, learn the lesson once. You don't need to repeat things over and over. I gave you the lesson to learn, not to be stupid, but to learn it, right? And then I heard, then now have gratitude for everything.
Yeah.
Gratitude is everything. If you don't have gratitude, you have nothing, right? You're just misery. And then the last thing was in the last part of it, it's all perfect, whole, and complete, as that's a landmark saying, but more or less, it's all a gift. Every bit of it. There's no mistakes. It's all a gift. You get to live this life. And when you live in that space, trauma disappears.
Mhm.
And that was huge. And I'm like sitting there going, do I have a book in me somewhere? Like,
That sounds like a great book. Let's write it.
well, if I
I
was
might know someone who can help
I was about to say,
birth.
if I was going to write a book, I definitely want to write it with you because I read your book and I laughed even through your pain and through the painful stuff. You left it with humor and you kept it fun and light. It
Yeah.
wasn't like conversations,
No.
but you made it so that it was fun to read. I highly admired your book. I was like, I couldn't put it down.
There's a bonus chapter out there. I don't know if I sent it to you. And like I pulled up a couple of things that like touched on because I was like, oh, these all like resonate with me that I've either learned through life or just downloads or plant medicine or whatever you want to just yeah. I mean so many because I wrote down the other day I was like if I think of how deeply I love then what's the capacity of the creator above, and so I'm like that also wow, that's a lot of love. And then speaking of my chapter, my bonus chapter, my editor had told me that my book was complete where it ended, and that may be true, but some people have told me like this needed to be in there. And it was that after I finished the edits and everything. I was reading, this was August of 2020. I was reading Many Lives, Many Masters at the
Mm.
time while I was combing through my book. And then I got the news that my stepdad had died. And I wrote the book entirely with the perspective that he was going to be alive and read it one day. But I just had this I just burst into tears. And I just had this like understanding and knowing that he had come into my life to impact me in both the quote unquote negative or positive ways, so that through the expression of me, through my healing, it has the highest good of all, evolution, that sort of thing. And so it's like, even though that I had experienced some traumatic situations, it was all for me. I got like very clear. I was like, wow, like
Mm.
I felt like we had a soul agreement to help evolve consciousness and expand and all of
One of
that.
the things I've learned after my father died was there was a freedom in that as well. I mean, I miss
Mhm.
him, I love him, but there was this
Oh, yeah.
expectation that I had to do certain things to make him happy. And I tell my kids all the time, you don't have to make me happy. It's your life. You live your life. I will never tell my kids what to do. I tell them, if you ask me my opinion, I'll tell you my opinion, but I am not going to ever tell you how to live your life.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing with that theory and whatnot. I've watched them struggle. I watched them get beaten up by life, but I also watched them persevere and not have to need me or
Mhm.
ask me for my advice. They barely ever ask me for my advice. And when they do, I just sit there and go, I know you got this, right? Like,
Mhm.
so parenting is an interesting dynamic because if you get the fact that you have an imprint on your kid, parenting is a tough job. All the people who parent out there, even your dog, right? I know you love your little dog,
I
but
do.
your dog's going to pick up on your habits, right? He's going to do your thing. So he's going to want to make you happy. We're all that way. We're all people pleasers, right? Which unfortunately in the long run becomes detrimental because it hurts us, not helps us, because we
Mhm.
forget who we are. And that's
Mhm.
the premise of healing, right? Is to really, one, feel safe. So neurofeedback helps the brain feel safe. Psychedelics, people always ask me about, well, what if you have a bad trip? I say there is no such thing as a bad trip.
Mm-mm.
My first trip
Get
was,
what you need.
you get something out of it and you learn from it and you integrate it into your life. That's really important. This journey we're on, if you look at it as a gift and not a punishment, it changes everything. It's like
Yeah.
everything is here for me. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Dad was an asshole. Why was dad an asshole? 'Cause to make sure I wouldn't be around other assholes when I got older.
Yeah, how
Right.
could this work for me?
Exactly. And what it's done, what I see in you, and I read, your energies is this glowing thing. So whatever you went through, you had to go through to become who you are today. Because if
Mhm.
you didn't, who knows who you might have been? You might
Oh,
have,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, one of
So
the best compliments I've ever gotten, he was like, "Damn, you've been through the fire and I can't even smell the ashes." I was like, "Thank you, I appreciate that. It's taken a lot of time."
well, I
Can't
can't tell you
surrender
what
and accept it.
people can see the ashes in my world. I've had many people say to me, "I've seen you change so much, Ron. You have drastically changed." Yeah, consciously, I've tried to.
Yeah, and that's evidence of what's possible for other people too, which is beautiful. It's like, "Oh, if he can change, then I can change too."
Well, you
Or
can't do it by
that's a possibility,
you
yeah.
can't do it by yourself. I'm going to share this with you right now.
Mhm.
The greatest way to heal is to accept God in your life. And I'm not here to start pushing the gospel or anything like that, but it will change your life if you do have a relationship with God. And God is a gift. And if we ignore that there's something out there, something bigger than us, if we don't believe in something that takes on us and helps us and wants us to evolve, then what we're really doing is we're really egotistical, and we need to, that's going to be a lesson you're going to learn. I'm telling you right now.
Or maybe nihilistic that everything has no meaning, which I don't subscribe to that.
Well, that's a
My
whole
relation I have a relationship with God, it just looks and sounds a lot different than the one that I grew up with.
Well, you know what? I
Yeah.
think also that man destroys the relationship with God,
Yeah.
not God. I
Yeah.
think that when we look at religion and why people have I became a Christian. So here we go. I became a Christian back in June of 2024. And when I started telling people who were Christians, I'm like, why? Why? And I'm like, because I have a relationship with Jesus. And they would tell me their horror stories of what happened in church with priests and whatnot. And I'd be like, well, those were man doing that. It has nothing to do with Jesus. Those are people who came in. We're all flawed. That's the first thing we have to accept. That was the
Yeah.
first. We're all flawed. No one's going to get out of this thing without being broken. We're all broken, right? That was what I got. The first thing that was given to me in that ayahuasca is you need something bigger than me. You're not in charge. You're broken. We're all
See,
broken.
I don't think we're broken, I think we're flawed, but I think, like,
Well, I think
yeah.
broken and flawed is by degree.
I
By
just don't like the
degree.
word broken because, yeah, sometimes that implies, irrepair I don't know.
No,
No,
broken
yeah.
means you need to accept that you're not perfect.
Yeah, that I can get down with.
Right? So I think that perfection is something that we think as a society is possible. And I'm going to share with you,
Uh,
if you think you're perfect, you're on your way to pain, because you're
yeah.
going to wake up to nobody liking you if you think you're perfect. And if you think you need to become perfect, you're never going to hit it. So it's going to be
Mhm.
miserable. Life is going to get hard. You're going to be like, why am I not perfect? Why?
Yeah.
And,
Or why strive for something that's not possible?
and that's the other thing, acceptance of everybody for who they are. If you accept people for their flaws instead of thinking they're supposed to be perfect, now you're developing empathy, and
Mhm.
empathy is allowing us to allow other people to heal as well.
Connection,
So
yeah.
it goes back to my favorite poem, Our Deepest Fear. It's on my wall over there, and I'm probably paraphrasing
Hmm.
wrong, but Our Deepest Fear by Marianne
Oh,
Williamson.
love that. Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
So our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light,
Mhm.
not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be fabulous, talented, gorgeous? Who are you not to be? You are a child of
Mhm.
God. You playing small never serves anyone, right? And
So
it
true.
says, goes on to say, and if you let your light shine, it gives people permission to let their light shine. And as you become whole, they become whole. So all
Mhm.
we are is reflections for each other. We're mirrors.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
that we
sometimes that light may trigger others, but maybe and that's a pivotal part of their process too.
Well, someone said a great quote was, "My light might trigger yours, but it's evolving
You're
you."
welcome.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. There's a lot of great quotes out there. I wish I could remember them all, but I'll tell you what: we're all here to have a healing experience. If you're ignoring that, you're really missing out on the most beautiful thing about life, which is yourself, and learning who you really are.
Mhm.
And then who God is. And then as you evolve to self realization to exercise who you are in that space, then you can maybe, I doubt I'll ever reach a Christ consciousness, but wouldn't that be amazing to be in that light where you can walk and nothing gets to you, nothing
Mhm.
bothers you? That's worth more than any piece of material stuff you could ever have. To walk into any environment, be peaceful, loving, and contributing to
Accepting.
others, that's amazing.
Accepting. Yeah, I've experienced a lot of freedom recently. I read The Courage to Be Disliked, and it talks a lot about Adler psychology and just unassigning the tasks that aren't mine from the first place, like other people's opinions.
Sure.
And
Well,
so,
that's
like,
what's going on in
that is,
their head,
yeah, I'm like, that's
in their
theirs. That's
flaws.
not mine. And so there's just like so much freedom. And also, they weave in the serenity prayer in that book too, which is beautiful.
Well, I go to AA meetings. I don't have an alcohol problem or a drug problem, but I've gone to AA meetings and I find them to be amazing because the
Yeah.
first premise out of AA is
Something
you have
greater than
control.
yourself.
Yeah, surrender. You don't have control of your life. Give it over to God.
Interestingly enough, like I grew up in that realm and space, so I feel like maybe some of my subconscious was primed for that because like my stepdad was, an AA attender for 20 something years. My mom probably has a PhD in Al-Anon.
What's his name? Lonnie, your stepdad?
That's the name in the book. I'll
Yeah,
stay with that. Yeah.
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 I remember that name stuck in
Hmm.
my craw.
What?
It my
Oh.
experience of reading your book was like, motherfucker.
Well, I kind of wanted people to fall in love with him as a father figure and then like flip it like it
Well,
was
that's
for
exactly
me.
why I got
Yeah.
motherfucker, excuse my language, was because of the fact that he earned trust and then he
Yeah.
betrayed it. And I was like,
Yeah. But it was all for me.
yep,
I
I
had
get
a
that.
response initially, but yeah, I definitely came to the conclusion that it was all for me.
Yeah.
And so whenever you said that and we're telling your story, I started crying. It was very emotional and tugged on my heartstrings. I loved it. And I'm really grateful you shared that. Because whenever I'm experiencing emotion, I feel like that is truth as resonance in my body.
Well, I'll share this with you. We go through this for a reason. And I don't know the reason. And God knows far better than all of us. And he sees all of us and believes in all of us. And when you hear that and you say to yourself, if you accept it as real, then all of a sudden it makes everything magical. If you don't accept it, then it makes everything like you're in a chaotic world and there's no purpose to it whatsoever. So I look at it like this is a gift. I
Yeah.
love watching people's lives heal because when people heal, you're giving them something that, well, God's giving them. You just sit back and watch, but they're getting something that nothing financially could ever
Yeah.
substitute, right? All the gold in the world is not going to make a person happy. I've watched it many times.
Oh, I've had that experience for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah, and
know.
then and once they're healed, they go out into the world and create beautiful ripple effects.
Yeah, well, that's what you did. You
Yeah.
do. You're changing
Thank
people's
you.
lives with your books, with your podcasts.
I'm a healer.
Yeah, we're
You're
all
a healer.
healers. We all have the. That's another thing. We all have the ability to help each other heal. You know how
Mm-hmm.
you help someone heal? Love them.
Mm,
Just love them.
love and
Love them
accept.
for all their flaws.
Yeah.
Love them for all their mistakes. Love them for where they're at. Because if you can love somebody for everything they're about, love wins.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many quotes in the Bible. My favorite one is, well, about love is like when if your enemies feed them, give them water when they're thirsty, feed them when they're hungry. It's like pouring hot coals on their head, right? Kill them with love is what it's saying, right? That's in Psalms and it's, I think, in Romans. And what it's saying is basically, I'm in charge of how this is going to be. And I'm going to love on you. And eventually it's going to break you down because love wins.
Yeah, if I'm only
Love
getting
always wins.
love. Yeah. I had an experience at the end of February. I was doing like one of my first private tantra events and we were just sharing like grief stories or like stories or lessons we had wish we had communicated to our loved ones. And I was like, I wish I would have told my friend that I loved him whether he was using or not. And then this shooting star darted across the sky. I was like, he knows. He knows. It was just so, and I just like spontaneously started crying.
I've heard stories about where people go to the other side and they see people and they meet them with love. They meet
Yeah.
them their worst enemies meet them there with love.
Like a welcoming party.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's so let's call it that. Everybody's in your life as an actor or partake in a play that
Yeah.
you're living to grow. And you just got to learn to love people. I know this is crazy, but you kill people with love. I learned this also when I was a leader of a group and I had to speak in front of everybody. The first time I spoke, everybody was attacking me. And I had someone clear me for the next meeting. And I walked into the room and I just kept smiling at people. And I think to myself, I love you. And
Mm,
I'd catch eyes. And if I would say, I love you in my head, they would look back at me and smile back, right? They
mm,
could feel the love. And then if
mhm,
I looked at someone and I'd say, I love you, and I didn't get anything, I knew they weren't there. They weren't present. So I would call on them. I'd say, hey, so and so. And did you get that? Did you get that? And I'd just smile at them and they'd be kind of embarrassed, but they would feel the love come at them that they would give it up immediately. That's how you win. That's healing, is loving
mhm.
people. And there's no other way around it. And if we can learn to get upset, if we can stop being upset when someone cuts us off and go, have a great day, I love you. I know a guy that's dying right now. He's an elderly guy. He's in a hospital in Ohio. He's got cancer really bad. He walks into the oncology ward. He says to everybody he walks up to, remember, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you, and I love you too. And this guy has created a movement there. Everybody in that hospital knows Tom. Everybody knows him. He's like this. You can tell he's in pain every time he talks, but his energy gets up the minute he says, Jesus loves you. And it's kind of cute. It's, it's cute, but it's also empowering because love wins.
Yeah, but there's been times before I would like to make this a more regular practice, but I'll just be walking down the street or, I'm like, and I love you. And I'm thinking it, I love you, and I love you, and I love you. And I love like the Ram Dass quote about are we all God in drag? Because I tend to think that, if we look at each other as like different expressions of God, or like we're all little mini gods, as far as like God experiencing us, like, oh, I get to experience you through this lens, and we're all walking each other home and healing and looking at it through.
What
I
I
like it.
get, what I get from Ram Dass, one of my favorite quotes that Michael always brings up for me, is that what I look for, I find. What I'm seeking, I find, right? So if I'm seeking that you're an asshole, you're going to show up as an asshole. If I seek that you're a
Absolutely.
beautiful person, you're going to show up as a beautiful person. So that's one. And then, we're all mirrors for one another, which is another factor. And there was another quote that I wanted to throw out there, and I just went boom. So it's gone.
Be here now. We're walking each other home.
Maybe. I mean, it's all, they're all truths, right? They're all beautiful truths. And there's a lot of great stuff out there to empower us. And you're here for only a certain amount of time. I would think that the best thing you can do is just stay in that empowered zone and learn to love life, whatever shows up for you. It's a gift.
It's
So,
totally a gift, like one of the most beautiful gifts.
well, I appreciate very much being here today. This
I'm
was fun.
so glad that you're here. God, I feel like we could just dipped our toe, so you'll definitely have to come back on. Would you want to share any upcoming events or any ways to reach you?
If you want to reach me, I don't know. I don't have much for web pages and stuff. I kind of
Instagram.
I have Instagram. Yeah. What is my name on Instagram? It's not Ron Nathanson.
It's long. I'll put it in I'll link it.
Ron Transformation. Yeah, because I also do coachings, right? So I've done a lot of transformative coaching for people. I've helped a lot of amazing stories. People really take some games and go big with them. But the coaching I do is
Wow. Own it.
right? And then like other people I worked with someone that helped get a play on off Broadway
Oh,
from
cool.
scratch. We sat there from the beginning all the way to the opening night, and that was fun. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun coaching people. The pandemic allowed me that opportunity because no one was coming into my office
Yeah.
during the the lockdown.
Yeah.
I used to drive around with an adjusting table in my car. And so if the cops pulled me over not once, but like 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm just doing house calls. There's an adjusting table in the back. And I'd go hiking. I'd be like up at State Park hiking and be like, fuck this bullshit. Excuse me.
God bless Texas now.
God bless Texas. I live in New York. So it's been interesting.
It's a little different.
Texas is a much more freeing state. Now, it's amazing to think that I live in a country that has difference from state to state and that we have different freedoms and that our government has so much say over us. That's enough to make me scratch my head sometimes and go, so anyway, we could talk for hours here.
I know. I want to come up for some brain mapping. I'm very curious.
Well, that's one of the things I'm doing this next ceremony in April. We have a ceremony on the 11th through the 13th. I'm actually mapping people pre and post to see if the changes take place during the ceremony. What changes actually change the brain?
And do they need to come to your office to do the pre? Okay.
Well, that might be the next step, is to create a weekend sometime where we do brain maps pre, post each cerememy. That would be pretty wild.
Be interesting.
Yeah, I just don't know if I'd be enjoying the ceremony that way.
Yeah. No. No, I'm curious to see what it would look like before and after. That's so cool.
Well, there's definitely changes. I've seen it in my brain maps, what happened. I also use a lot of I use a lot of nutrients and herbs to change people. I work with a company that like I said, really changes brain maps as well. and helps trauma. And and people don't sell it that way. But when
Mhm.
cellular damage is trauma on the body, free radical damage on the cells is trauma, and the body's breaking down. Mitochondrial health is trauma. You go look up a word on PubMed called oxidative stress. When I started looking at this topic 3 years ago, there was 260,000 peer-reviewed articles. Where 3 years later, it's now 256. I'm sorry, 356,000. So that's almost
Mhm.
100,000 peer-reviewed articles in 3 years.
Wow.
That's 30,000 peer-reviewed articles a year. It's 100. That's 300 plus. What do you know? 33,000 a year. Divide that by 52. So that's like 600 peer-reviewed articles a week. This is a hot topic.
Yeah.
This is a hot topic. And if you're having problems with anything, cancer, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, all connected to oxidative stress.
Is
All
that
of it.
inflammation?
What's that?
So what is oxidative stress?
Oxidative stress is free radical damage to the
Okay.
cells. So if you want more information, hook me up on an instant message on Instagram. Okay. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
connect
that's
with Dr. Ron. I'll put all the links in, or my lovely assistant will put all the links in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this conversation, I'd totally appreciate a review or a share or a something to keep this train chewing.
all right. Well, I
Yes.
think, I watch your 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 videos. I don't want to call this. Is it a podcast? Your podcasts are amazing. I love your
Thank
podcasts.
you. I appreciate it.